So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have as my guest today, Allan J. Katz. Allan, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So Allan is a healthy intimacy coach, licensed professional counselor, and certified sex addiction therapist in the Mid-South. He has counseled over 1,000 clients with relationship and intimacy issues, out of control sexual behavior, and trauma. Allan is the co-author of the book Ambushed by Betrayal, the survival guide for betrayed partners on the hero's journey to healthy intimacy. Allan, fascinating topic. I mean, specialization. We'll get to that. Before we
Okay.
do, welcome to the podcast. Share with the listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
Well, I was born in Memphis and I'm still in Memphis. So I've been here 72 years.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. So look,
I spent
how did,
I spent 4 years in New York at school,
okay,
but then I've always been here.
okay. How did you get into this field, this specialization?
Okay, so I I was I was a marketing executive for about 20 years. My parents originally wanted me to be an accountant, and I was an accountant. Then I owned a restaurant, and I sold Yellow Pages. And I never really wanted. I didn't feel it was creative enough to be an accountant. So I got into marketing, and I was a. That's where that coach thing comes in, the loyalty coach. Um, I switched it now to the intimacy coach, but it used to be the loyalty coach, and I would help small businesses with their marketing. And then we sold our business, and I just wasn't feeling like I was getting a lot of self worth, from doing this. I didn't feel like, I kept comparing myself to other people. This person was more wealthy. This person was more well known, and I just didn't feel I was making a difference. And so I have a problem. I've had a problem with porn addiction in my past, and so I started going to 12-step groups, and I also started a hotline for Jewish people who were suffering from sex and love addiction. There's a
Oh,
website called guardyoureyes.com, and I started a hotline for them about 12 years ago. And I started the first online groups for them also. And now it's become just a whole, a major course, and it's really helped a lot of people. But because I started getting really good results with them, my therapist told me, she says, well, why don't you become a therapist? And I said, well, I'm 58 years old. I can't go back to school now and get a master's degree. That would be ridiculous. But she said, well, you're going to be 60 anyway. You might as well go do it. So that's what I did. I took off 2 years, and my wife was working, so the money wasn't a big issue.
mm-hmm.
And went back to school at 58, and
Whoa.
um, got my master's degree, got my license, and I've been practicing. Spent 6 years in an alcohol and drug treatment center, doing groups and individual. And then I've been in private practice for 4 or 5 years now. So that's a long story, but
No, but that's what this is about. Wow, very impressive. So you the did I hear you correctly? The main impetus for this specialization was your own porn addiction.
correct.
And when we hear porn addiction, I think people think a lot of things. What is it? How does it occur? Why does it happen? I know it happens differently for different people, but talk more about that.
Right. Okay. Well, so like any addiction, somebody can drink one drink and they're fine, right? Or they can gamble a little bit, but once it becomes compulsive and obsessive, then one drink can become 20 drinks, and then you're in bad shape. You're an alcoholic. But with porn addiction, like same thing. You can look for a few minutes, and maybe every week or every month, but when it becomes obsessive, where you're spending hours and hours online or talking and chatting with people or videos and things like that, then it becomes obsessive. I mean, it's the pornographers know very well that it's very addictive, and so that's why they have so many varieties of different forms of pornography, different shapes, different sizes, different ethnic things. I don't want to get into all the details, but um, so they know how to keep you on there for longer and longer, and the longer you stay on there, you start to develop certain chemicals in your brain where you almost feel numb,
Hmm.
and you don't think about eating, you don't think about sleeping. You're in there, you're addicted, and it's very hard to get out of that.
And like with many addictions, and some would say all addictions, there oftentimes is an underlying trauma.
Correct.
Okay, was
So
that the case with you?
right. So what we there was no major trauma, but there was what we call little t trauma, which I'm sure you've heard of. So with little t trauma, um, I grew up with parents who did not have any self esteem, and so they couldn't give me any self esteem. I was constantly yelled at. Um, I never. I became national president at 18 of a youth organization with 18,000 members. And when I called my parents, to tell them that I won the election, it was just like big deal. Like, so I just never got a lot of accolades or, self worth, self esteem. And I just grew up very, and people used to come over to me and say, "You look so sad. What's wrong?" And I would say, "Well, nothing. This is just the way I am.
This is me.
This is me. I'm an introvert. What do you want?" But really, I was probably depressed, and I look back at some of my pictures, like in the school yearbooks, in like seventh grade. I'm just sitting there like not smiling, and so I don't know. I don't have it's a little blurry with my younger age, and I think for a lot of people, I wouldn't say when I was growing up that I was addicted to porn. We would look at magazines, Playboy, but it was you had to go to a convenience store and you feel embarrassed because there was a woman behind the counter.
Hmm.
You were asking for a Playboy or whatever, Hustler, something. But now with the internet, I think a lot of people that were not addicted have become addicted because
Right.
it's so addictive. Just the movement and the color and the sound and all that video together just makes it a lot more intense.
How did you begin to seek out healing for this?
Well, so where was I? I was in Las Vegas once and when I was in the marketing business, I was doing a trade show.
Are
And,
you married at this time?
oh, yeah. I've been
Okay.
married 51 years to the
Okay.
same person. Um, so I was already going to 12-step groups, but I went to Las Vegas for this trade show, and I wasn't doing really well. I wasn't doing well at all. Like people weren't buying anything. They weren't coming over to my booth, and it just and I found myself going out to like strip clubs, and that was the main thing. But I realized after that this was crazy. Like there's
Mm,
really something wrong, and I have to get some more a higher level of care. Let's put it that way. And so when I went back to my 12-step group when I got home, I asked someone, "Do you know a CSAT? Do you know someone who really is into this?" Because my therapist before was not certified in sex addiction. So they told me about this woman in Memphis who basically saved my life, and
wow.
she was the one that told me that you have to go to a. I went to a 7-day intensive in Nashville, and I went to all kinds. I went to 2 years of group therapy every Monday morning from 10 to 12, doing experiential
Hmm.
psychodrama, things like that. And that really, I joke around and say that I did more in those 2 years, mental health, than I did in 25 years of talk therapy.
Now,
And so,
if I may, thank you for
sure.
sharing this, by the way. And I realize, we don't have all the time in the world, and these are difficult questions to synthesize. But could you talk a little bit about why that treatment was so uh, uh, earth-shattering for you? Why was it so helpful? What about it?
Okay, so and it's very very apropos for trauma treatment also, by the way, since you know the reason psychodrama is so amazing to me is that instead of telling you what my problem is, I show you what my problem is.
Hmm.
Instead of telling you that dad or mom did this to me, I show you what they did. And so if I'm in a group, for example, and I'm upset with my mother or father, I'm going to have somebody in the group playing mom or dad,
Right.
and I'm going to say what I may not have been able to say to them to their face directly, or they've passed away, and I'm still holding on to grudges. I'm still holding on to resentments. And so, after about 2 minutes of doing this, that person who is not your mom or dad starts to feel like your mom and dad. It's I can't. It's hard to explain why that happens, but it becomes very real very quickly, and you're able to literally take the stuff, the trauma that you've been storing in your brain because you haven't been able to say it. It's all of a sudden now it's coming out, and literally it's leaving your body so you can start to heal. And so, or even something as simple as, so we used to do this every Monday morning, but something as simple as, I'm afraid that if people touch me, or I'm afraid of getting too close. And so all the people in the group, you lay down on the floor, and all the people in the group were ask you where they can touch you appropriately. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden you've got all these people just touching you, and you feel like just calm again.
Hmm.
It affects your body. You feel like like if you were being hugged by 6 people or something.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of different ways. And then there's this thing called role reversal, which is, now that I've talked to dad, I'm gonna turn around, and I'm gonna be dad and answer me.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we've
So
had a lot of episodes on here about psychodrama. It's
okay.
really fascinating. Um, wow.
So
So,
I was able to find my voice, basically, is what it was. I never thought, I was not very assertive at all. And so working on my assertiveness was something that I needed psychodrama for, to be able to have a voice and be able to express myself. And so even as a therapist now, that was one of my original struggles, was to be able to be more assertive in session with a client, telling a client that he's that he's full of it, or that's not right, to do that or something.
Hmm.
Um, so that was a real challenge, and I've worked through a lot of that. And what's funny is that about a month ago, I went back to my therapist that I originally was at, uh, just to talk about some therapy things. And I told her some of these stories, and she said, "Well, that is assertive." So I really was happy that I finally got there. That I worked on the assertiveness, and
Yeah.
I can do it now. So
So was that experience before you enrolled in your master's program and got licensed as a counselor?
the group process, yes,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
Okay. So talk to us about your decision to specifically want to help people regarding sex addiction or porn addiction or so forth.
Okay. It was because it was the first time in my life that I felt a sense of purpose and a sense of I'm making a difference finally in somebody's life instead of trying to work on myself. But that gave me just a sense of purpose,
Hmm.
and what's really interesting about it is that I always had these negative voices, negative beliefs, irrational beliefs coming in to my own self when I was in marketing, always questioning myself, because it's difficult, because people, advertisers expect a certain amount of uh, results, and if you don't give them those results,
Right.
you're not there. So now I was getting good results with helping people, and it just made me feel good about myself, and all that negativity just went away. I just don't,
Wow.
it just not come into my head. I can't explain it, but it's just, you know am I doing that? So somebody criticizes me, I'll say, okay, well, that's okay. But before I would, be hard. I would be upset for a week or two because,
Hmm.
one person said they didn't like what I was saying or doing, But now I just kind of chalk it up to, you know, there's other people in the world I can help. So, you
What I
know,
find so inspiring about you and your story, Alan, is your journey, and it's not too dissimilar from my own. I mean, you excuse me, you went through a lot of different experiences, and it took a lot for you to find a context and a situation where you shined,
yeah,
and that's really, I think a lot of people out there can relate to that because it's not easy to deal with those voices in our heads, to manage those, and to break free in a sense, and to go back to school at the 50s. I mean, Jesus Christ, I went back to school at 36. I thought I was doing something,
well,
but that's
yeah.
that's amazing. So when you're working with people, and do you have a particular special population, quote unquote, that you like to work with? Do you like to work with men or
I
so
mostly work.
forth?
I mostly work with men who
You do,
are
okay.
sex and love addicts. I do have a few partners that I work with. I do have some. I'm starting to get more females who are just having like relationship issues, and I work a little bit with couples that are going through infidelity or just communication problems, things like that.
Hmm.
So
And
that's
and I mean, obviously we've heard some about your background and experience, but what do you feel you bring to the relationship when you're working with these, let's say, men?
Well, first of all, I've been there. So when I say I understand, I understand. Okay.
Right.
And
And that counts for a lot, I think,
oh, for
in a
sure.
therapeutic
And I'm and
relationship.
I'm
Yeah.
older, and I'm older, and I have a lot more experience and just life
Right.
experience, because I think a lot about like these younger therapists that are just right out of school, and you're getting a really getting a really complicated case about infidelity, and some counselors will say, well, just divorce the guy, but we know that we can hopefully help them, through experience. And so and I've been that through that with my wife too, where she was very upset with things that I was doing, and we worked through it. And so I can help other clients work through it.
That's amazing. I was going to ask you about that. I mean, that's amazing. I think admirable too that we're able to work through that with your wife. I mean, I'm assuming that for a while she didn't know about this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did you have to tell her? Did she find out? What happened there?
Um, I'm trying to remember. I think one day I just told her. She didn't find out, but one day I just told her that, because I had to go to that meeting on a Tuesday night. I had to go to the first SLAA meeting on Tuesday night. I had to tell her where I was going.
Hmm.
And so, I just told her that I had this problem and I needed to explore it and see whether that was something. And in my first meeting, they said, your insides never matched what you saw on the outsides of others. And when I heard that line, I said, this is for me. I've never heard that before, but that's my life, just from that one sentence.
So,
Your insides never matched what you saw on the outsides of others. In other words, I'm always comparing myself to somebody outside of me. That they're
right.
better, they're wealthier, they're happier, whatever. And that's what it was,
Mm. I
for
think a
many
lot of
years.
us can relate to that. So let's talk about the book, Ambushed by Betrayal, the survival guide for betrayed partners on their hero's journey to healthy intimacy. Um, w- Talk to us about the book. Who's it for? Why'd you write it?
Okay, so I wrote it with a woman named Michelle Saphir, who's a marriage and family therapist and also a CSAT. And she knew that I'd written some other books, so she asked me to co-write this book with her. And so I gave more of the addict side of this, and she gave more of the partner side. So basically, this book is for partners of sex and love addicts or porn addicts who want to go, who want to make things right, who
Hmm.
want to understand what's happening to them, that this is normal. What's happening to them is normal because they've been betrayed. It's betrayal trauma, is what it is. They've been betrayed, and we have a specific process that we work them through to get all the way to forgiveness and then to self actualization.
So
Um,
the spouse who's been betrayed has gone through a trauma
correct.
themselves,
Yeah,
right?
betrayal. But it's a betrayal trauma, is what we call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
Just go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So briefly, how do you approach that treatment? What does that look like?
Well, basically, it's it's a lot of questions, but it's allowing the spouse to write down her feelings, because a lot of us, we intellectualize what we're feeling, but we don't talk about it or we don't write it down. And when you write it down, it becomes very real. And so if you can get out your own story, or your, as the betrayed partner, you can get out your feelings and emotions. So we interviewed hundreds of betrayed partners, and we got their quotes, which are, a lot of them
Oh,
are in
wow.
the book, and we found out what they were feeling. And so we crafted questions in the workbook toward dealing with some of those emotions, so that other women would realize, women or men would realize that, this is normal for you to feel this way, but then now there's a path to get out of that.
With um with porn addiction and sex addiction, Um, is it, and I guess, again, I'm sure it's different for a lot of people, but is it mostly about the sex or is it about something else?
Great question. So
Yeah.
it's not about sex. It sounds strange to say, but it's more. It's what it is about power. It's about
Power.
the need power, the need to control. So think about it. If a guy is looking at porn, right? He has the power finally to say, I don't want to look at this one now. I'm going to switch to this video, or I'm going to do something else, or I'm going to pay somebody for sex online or offline. And I have the power to tell that person what I want them to do, right? Finally, I have the power and control that I did not have growing up because I didn't, I
Hmm.
was abandoned or neglected or just never got affirmations from someone else, and so that's what I'm craving, and so I'm gonna now I've got the opportunity to do that. So it's a that's what it's about. It's also about shame, the shame cycle. The addict doesn't know, once they feel shame of acting out, they feel shame and guilt. The only
Hmm.
way they know to get rid of the shame and guilt is to do it again. And so it becomes a vicious cycle over and over again. So shame is the motivator or the cycle engine, so to speak.
Wow.
So yeah.
Allan, again, the book is called Ambushed by Betrayal, the survival guide for betrayed partners on their hero's journey to healthy intimacy. We'll have that linked up here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Allan, how can people learn more about you, perhaps get the book as well? What's the best way?
Well, they can get my website is allanjkatz.com. It's ALLANJKATZ.com.
Okay.
And I also have a section in there on my website called Creative Tools for Therapists. So these are tools that trauma therapists can use to help their clients experientially with exercises. And also, if they ever think about doing an intensive or something, there's a very comprehensive 3-day intensive program
Oh,
that I offer there if they're
okay.
interested in such a thing. But
Okay.
that's how you can get in touch with me. Do you want me to give the phone number, or is that
No, I think that's sufficient
okay?
here. And again, I'll have the both those links, your website and the tools, up here at the show notes page. Allan, wow, thank you for just being open and vulnerable and sharing your experience. I mean, this is an intense topic, definitely, but you are one inspiring individual. I appreciate you being on here.
Well, thank you. I
All right,
appreciate
man. All right, take care.
it. All right. Thank you.